Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to share my presentation with you today, and I hope it will be quite engaging and will generate a lot of interesting questions, which I'm happy to discuss during the conference. My presentation will share my research development focusing on new computational methodologies that tap on the open data resources and employ automatic data aggregation tools to inform decision-making process, international cultural relations, and cultural diplomacy. It will start by overviewing existing tools in soft power measurements and then will move to present new solutions that was developed to overcome numerous shortcomings in computational soft power research. So let's start with some basic definitions. Cultural diplomacy as a practice and as a subfield of national foreign policy emerged in the midst of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Russia. Initially, it was defined by the United States Department of State in 1959 as the direct and enduring contact between people of different nations to help create a better climate of international trust and understanding in which official relationships can operate. If not mitigating geopolitical conflicts, the ultimate goal of cultural diplomacy includes creating a positive view of the nation in the eyes of the foreign publics, facilitating a stronger cooperation or creating political alliances. In the past 2 decades, cultural diplomacy started to be conceptualized through the notion of soft power. Coined by Professor Joseph Nye, soft power refers to intangible forms of power such as culture, ideology, and institutions that allow countries to achieve their foreign policy objectives. In the context of the knowledge-based global economy, soft power is a more sophisticated tool to influence international politics by contrast to military or economic coercion. In the past decades, the concept of soft power has gained a strong international popularity. And the extent of a nation's soft power is an increasingly subject to data-driven measurements with the unfolding process of increasing datafication. Datafication refers to a process through which social interaction acquires a new digital or online dimension, generating quantified data, allowing for real-time tracking and predictive analysis. This creates conditions for more rigorous assessment of the diplomatic and soft power impacts, which have long remained an Achilles heel or weak point of diplomacy, while being, of course, central concern for national governments. In the past, the majority of cultural diplomacy actors relied heavily on the descriptive accounts of diplomatic outputs, anecdotal evidences, sharing best practices. However, with the rise of the internet and mobile communications, the datafication processes have considerably enriched the diplomatic evaluation activities, offering new methods to measure global public engagement. The use of data in policymaking and diplomacy measurements transform both the decision-making process as well as the communication of policies to the masses. For example, in the past decades, data-driven measurements applied to evaluate soft power of countries gained a significant popularity with many ranking systems produced by national governments and private actors. You can see some of them on the screen, and the most powerful among all of them in terms of the global recognition is Soft Power Authority. So the Portland Index measures soft power of selected countries by using over 75 metrics across 6 sub-indices of data. Since 2010, it measured soft power for as many as 30 countries on the annual basis and earned a reputation of one of the most widely consulted indices among practitioners worldwide. For many countries, this index and this annual report is an important indicator of their global performance, and frequently nation states take their drop-down scores as a direct call for improvement. However, Soft Power Authority was severely criticized in academic scholarship for simplifying the understanding of soft power measured only in quantitative terms and for data colonization that endangers status and anxiety of actors. However, this scholarship doesn't go beyond a mere criticism of the failures of benchmarking systems. Addressing these gaps, my own research creation projects in the past few years took a more constructive approach. Intending to overcome fundamental problems existing in previously developed ranking systems, I embarked on a creative practice research journey that resulted in a pilot verb application museum soft power map. Specifically, I collaborated with the Australian Centre for the Moving Image, or ACME, in Melbourne to create a pilot dynamic application that can measure and demonstrate the institutional power of attractions across the globe. Let me show you a very short demo of this program. At the University of Melbourne, we've created a way for the first time to visually map and measure the soft power of museums. We have collaborated with the Australian Centre for the Moving Image to globally map ACME's resources, outputs, and outcomes. The system maps the data in 5 layers. The first layer maps ACME International Collection appeal power based on culture and language. The more intense the green, the greater the appeal power. As you can see, the collection appeals strongly in North America, Europe, and the Asia Pacific. The second layer is online engagement power, and it maps ACME's online global audiences. The varied intensity of the blue indicates that the majority of these audiences are coming from developed countries in Europe and North America. The Asia Pacific appears relatively untapped. If we move down, we come to the global connectivity power layer. And here we map ACME's relationship with 180 organizations around the world. We can see that ACME is strongly connected with museums in the United States and many European countries. Its relationships in the Asia Pacific are still emerging. The next layer, local engagement power, maps the international tours of ACME exhibitions. It correlates visitation data with multiple variables across different sets of data. Finally, we have the Melbourne engagement power layer that maps ACME's local audiences. Here a map of Melbourne is divided into 200 postcodes. We can see from the intensity of the green that the majority of ACME's audiences come from the central area in the city. So there you have it. ACME mapped across various dimensions of soft power, providing the museum with the key information for strategic planning and development. So, how this application is different from other dashboards, like, for example, Soft Power Authority. First, the dynamic web application applied a finer-grained data to represent institutional players who generate the power of attractiveness on the global stage. Focusing on museums as actors of soft power, the project revealed that measuring soft power of a whole country is very misleading. Country or city-wide evaluations do not consider the multifaceted and complex nature of different and very often competing actors within a specific national or regional community. By contrast to highly bureaucratic and slow government organizations, non-state actors like museums, for instance, could be more dynamic and responsive to changes in the unpredictable international climate. A good example is the leadership of Neil McGregor, a former director of the British Museum, who mediated high-level diplomatic situations to provide first aid to cultural institutions and communities in major international conflicts. For instance, during the Iraq War, which started in 2003, when the United States and British allies invaded the country, it was the British Museum that saved the main repository of national archaeological treasures of Iraq from complete destruction. When the Iraq National Museum was descended upon the looters, McGregor telephoned the Prime Minister of Great Britain, who had United States tanks deployed in front of the museum to secure it. During the following week, the British Museum curators traveled to Baghdad to help their Iraqi colleagues with conservations and first recovery measures. Second, the project employed geovisualization as an integrated approach. It allowed to meaningfully combine different methods of soft power explorations, including assessments of soft power capacities or resources, evaluations of outputs, network analysis, and measuring audiences' perceptions. The dynamic web application provided an inductive platform to explore soft power as a process, enabling an investigation of data from different stages of soft power conversion process. Finally, various soft power dashboards represent soft power as an omnipresent force equally affecting people living in different social, economic, political, and cultural locales. Soft Power Authority, for instance, doesn't account for countries' soft power reach and strength in different geographic areas. And it erroneously assumes that people living, for example, in South Africa, Colombia, United States, China, or even different parts of China, such as Hong Kong or Taiwan, would like or dislike, let's say, Russia to the same degree or extent. Understanding soft power not as a constanta, but as an important variable that dynamically changes its value on the global map, the application shifted away the attention from a high competition and soft power performance to exposing and exploring one's own weaknesses in different geographical zones. This approach stresses there is no one winner or loser of the soft power, but rather there are multiple complex factors that shape soft power conversion process from resources to outcomes, depending on specific local challenges and opportunities. While the geovisualization approach of museums of power inverted and reconfigured the soft power evaluation framework, overcoming many of its weaknesses, the application is still a subject for criticism. In the academic literature, for example, geovisualization is often criticized for presenting information in a distinctly positivist way, with technical barriers to integrate quantitative and qualitative data in order to generate new knowledge. In response to this critique, the project employed grounded visualization as a recursive and reflexive set of practices, drawing on both qualitative and quantitative research, in which data gathering, analysis, and presentations are conducted through multiple iterations in a quiet, fluid manner. Developing the geovisualization application demonstrated that not all collected data could be meaningfully quantified, of course. The project employed a qualitative analysis of the institutional historical records and insights and incorporated the dimension of digital storytelling that allowed for a more nuanced and accurate presentation of details. And specifically, the dynamic application features multiple hyperlinks, narratives, and storylines that trace Acme traveling exhibitions, describe multicultural programs, and map international partnerships across continents. The project also incorporated elements of reflexive design, embracing the subjective nature of data visualization. This was possible through partnerships with multiple stakeholders of the project, and of course with academic institutions and scholars from the University of Melbourne, and most recently from the University of Oxford Digital Diplomacy Research Centre. This year, the project significantly advanced by employing critical digital practice to experiment with data collected from 25 participating museums to build data to power prototype, a new mapping solution for assessing and predicting the soft power impact of museums. The development of the mapping platform happened through a series of international online research sessions, webinars, and datathons, which brought together museum professionals, policymakers, and digital creatives from Europe and Asia Pacific. Such a design of the project opened a discussion space with around 200 registered museum professionals from different parts of the world signed up for each online session to explore the potential of technologies to translate museum collections metadata, audiences analytics, as well as international exhibitions and programs insights into meaningful digital narratives. The project engaged around 25 collaborations representing major museums from the UK, Australia, and Singapore, including Victoria and Albert Museum in London, Asian Civilization Museum Singapore, and the Australian Museum in Sydney. And these partnerships ensured a community-driven research that solicited critical feedback from different stakeholders to avoid subjective biases usually inherited in data-intensive mapping. The new data to power prototype moved forward from labor-intensive data collection and analysis research to automative solution by adding more dynamic data mining and aggregation, as well as by tapping into open access data. The prototype developed a timeline allowing stakeholders to track their audience's development in different geolocations in different time periods. And finally, the prototype advanced the visualization software by employing machine learning and artificial intelligence to analyze patterns of cultural engagement to predict soft power. Finally, and the most important, the prototype advanced from a single museum application to an online service for cultural institutions by developing a dynamic mapping software for universal use across cultural institutions. Deconstructing the concept of soft power through the process of data mapping, the prototype reveals multiple variables shaping digital engagements of actors operating on the global level on three key stages of soft power conversion process, from mere resources to outputs in different geographic locations. To demonstrate data to power edge visualization capabilities, today I will focus on mapping digital collections, online audiences, and global touring exhibitions of the Museum Science Group in London. It was one of the most important partners in the project in the development of the solution, and it is the world's leading group of science museums, consisting of 5 British institutions with more than 400,000 objects and archives available online for explorations and research. The first mapping layer of the data to power prototype, collection rich power, is designed to automatically aggregate collections data from the application programming interface, or simply API, of digital catalogs and databases to geovisualize a potential collection's reach and appeal to audiences living in different countries around the world. Correlating collection geographic diversity with data digital, physical audiences, mobility insights, the layer exposes areas on the global map where collection items and artifacts might have a greater reach and potential appeal to local audiences. Such a mapping reveals to what extent different variables, such as, for example, local population's digital literacy or digital mobility or digital participation, apart from other social demographic factors, influence online audiences' engagements with digital content of their science museum group. The second mapping layer of the data to power prototype, online engagement power, and it is designed to automatically aggregate institutional verb and social media analytics, as well as open access user generated activity data to map and measure digital audiences engagement in different geolocations. Correlating institutional data with open access census data pertaining to social demographic statistics and digital mobility data in different countries, the layer exposes areas on the global map where a cultural institution enjoys greater digital attention and engagement and where it misses out. Understanding digital engagement of audiences in different countries as a dynamic variable, the layer offers a timeline setting that allows users to explore audiences' engagement not only across different countries, but also through the time. For example, with the Science Museum groups, we visualize the digital audiences engagement from 2017 until 2021, as you can see on the screen, and it exposed insignificant changes in audience geographical reach and cultural diversity taking place in the past five years, raising very interesting question about its international reach and power. The third mapping layer of the data to power prototype, local engagement power, is designed to aggregate open access urban cultural infrastructure data to measure and predict soft power of touring exhibitions and programs in different hosting places around the world. Correlating multiple institutional data sets, such as program visitations, ticket sales, social media, and website analytics, with data representing a wider hosting environment, in particular urban contexts, the layer assesses and predicts local impacts of international programs across different geolocations. It maps, measures, and forecasts the local engagement power of the past and future touring exhibitions of the Science Museum Group. And in the past several years and currently, there are two major traveling exhibitions. The first one, Superbugs exhibition, that embarked on its global tour in 2019 and was hosted in dozens of cities and museums in Argentina, India, China, and Russia. And the second one is Hunt for the Vaccine, that will start its journey in the end of this year by launching simultaneously in China and India. And for this exhibition that is still, being prepared for the audiences in China and India, we already predict its power, the local engagement power, in several cities in India. During my demo session at the Data for Policy conference, I will play with this demo prototype live and explain more details how it correlates multiple data sets from different sources to maps of power of cultural institutions across levels, from resources to outcomes. Please do come to ask your questions and explore how this tool could be used by you for your own organization to understand its global reach, connections, and impacts. Meanwhile, please explore much more video materials available about the Data to Power prototype by browsing datatopower.net. I'm happy to continue the conversation during and even beyond the conference, and you are very, very welcome to contact me anytime with your questions. Thanks once again for attention today, and have a good day. Enjoy the conference.